So about a week ago, we see Keith Thurman go out there, gets rid of Brock Jarvis over in Australia in about 3 rounds. Good for him, man. I remember when Keith Thurman was the absolute man at 147 pounds. A lot of people don't remember. It feels like ancient history. But there was a time when we were debating who the best in the world at 147 pounds was. And we were debating between Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, and Keith Thurman. That was the 3-headed monster, man. That was the one that we were all debating. Like, if this was some type of round robin, who would come out on top? Who would be the guy who would completely establish supremacy in the welterweight division between those 3 people? Now, look, we got to see who the man was at 147 pounds. That was Terrence Crawford. But it was because Keith Thurman kind of fell out of the mix, man, right? And sometimes that happens in boxing. Sometimes those injuries, they just catch up with you. Think about where we stand now. We saw this man lose to Manny Pacquiao. About 3 years out the sport, comes back, gets a fight against Mario Barrios, picks up the victory, looks good doing it. Mario Barrios is no chump. Then all of a sudden, it's another 3 years. Now we're seeing him fight Brock Jarvis in Australia at like 3 o'clock in the morning or something crazy. And it's like, wow, it seems like a long way off, right? It seems like this long type of fall off. But when you only fight twice in 6 years, it's tough to really get anything going. But when we see him come back, it's at 154 pounds, new division. Is this a new Keith Thurman? Is this guy who's going to come back and establish himself at the top again? I don't know, man. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. If off the top of my head, what I would say is no. Unfortunately, I think Keith's best days are behind him. I mean, that's just the way it is sometimes. It doesn't necessarily have to be. There's fighters who are older who are definitely able to make things happen. A lot of times we see heavyweights that are older that are able to make things happen because of the way that division is, just the nature of the bigger men. You can be older and you can still make things happen. Whereas you get down to these really lighter weights and so much of it is built off the athleticism and the speed and everything that it really favors the younger guy. So Thurman isn't an old man per se, but he is older. He's been incredibly inactive and he's fighting above his natural weight class. And when we think about 154 pounds, man, we got some absolute beasts out there. And one of the reasons I bring it up is because we just saw Fedor fight. Now, if you would have asked me 5-6 years ago, I'm taking Keith Thurman over Sebastian Fedor every day of the week. All right. Styles make fights. Not only do I think Keith Thurman is the better fighter, but I think that he had a style that was particularly made to beat a guy like Fedor. Right? Fedor wants to come out there. He's this aggressive pressure fighter throwing a bunch of punches. Thurman's tailor-made for that in the sense. We used to call this man one time because that's all it took. One time from that right hand and he was going to change the course of a fight. He was a sharpshooter. He was very explosive. He knew how to back up and kind of pop and hop himself into positions where he could land these brutal counter shots. He had the uppercut. He had the straight right. He had an overhand right. There was a lot of things that he could do. He was incredibly confident. He's got a chin on him. He would have been able to go in there and he would have been able to get Fedor out of there, even though he would have been moving up to 154 at the time. But as I sit here right now and look at him, I got to wonder, what's he going to be able to do if Fedor all of a sudden is able to get in second gear and able to get things going? He's able to get those punches rolling. He's able to get that work rate building on him. He's able to go in there. He's able to pressure Keith. Keith likes to move around. He likes to use the lateral movement, does it to set things up. But what if he's not going to be able to do that because he gets a little bit more tired, because his timing's a little bit off? What if he's not able to get the range that he wants in the distance because of Fedor's height and he's not quite able to figure it out? I'm not so sure that Keith Thurman would be able to fight through all of that anymore. I'm not so sure that he'd be able to bite down on his mouth guard and still be that dog that he was and get through those moments to be able to seal the victory. And it's not because he has any less heart or any less will or discipline or desire to win, but I don't know if his body is going to respond in a way that his mind wants him to, if he's going to be able to go in there and make those things happen. Maybe his best days are behind him. Now that doesn't mean that he's not a big name fighter. That doesn't mean that he's not a guy who can generate buzz. That doesn't mean that he's not a guy who won't get big fights. I think he's got at least one big fight left in him. That's what happens when you're a former world champion. You're coming back to the sport. Still to this day, the man has only one loss. He knows how to sell fights. People like him when he's in front of the camera and he's running his mouth. People like watching him when he's in there. He is an action-packed fighter. He is someone who's going to bring it to the table. So he comes out there and he gets that win against Brock Jarvis. Again, does what he's supposed to do in the sense that he gets the guy out of there early because Brock Jarvis was never in Keith Thurman's league. And I think that he's going to have one big fight left in him. Now, is that going to be with the Tim Tszyu? A fight that we wanted to see before but never materialized because of another injury? Is it going to be with a title holder like a Sebastian Fedor? So maybe he can end up getting his hands on another world title before it's all said and done? Is it going to be with a young guy like a Xander Zayas? Is it going to be with a Virgil Ortiz or something? I don't know. My guess is it's either going to be for a belt or it's going to be for a big money fight. he were to fight Tim Tszyu in Australia, that's going to be a big money fight. Doesn't even need to have a belt on the line. Tim Tszyu is a big name guy, massive amount of following in Australia. That one's going to sell based off of the name of both of them. If he gets in there, if he were to somehow be able to get a fight with Fedora, that fight would be big because it's got the world title implications. We'd be talking about Thurman being able to, what else is he going to do, adding to the legacy of his career. We know Fedora is an action-packed fighter. That one would probably turn out well. I couldn't see him fighting a young guy though, man. Could you see Keith Thurman turn around and fighting a Xander Zayas? Because that's the type of situation where we'd be looking at it from the outside and we'd be thinking, this is a classic old line, young line. We got the old line and Keith Thurman, the young line and Xander Zayas. They're feeding that old line to the young line to build him up. They want to put get that old line, get his name on the resume of the young guy, add legitimacy to him, build up his confidence, build up his resume, get him going. I don't know if Keith would agree to that at this point in his career. He doesn't seem like he needs to, so why exactly would he? And he's not a stupid man by any stretch of the imagination, so he would have to see what people were on, what the promoters were trying to, the angle that they were trying to take by the whole thing. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. You know, is he going to turn around and fight just an absolute beast of a guy like a Charles Conwell? No. A guy like Charles Conwell is a dangerous fighter who doesn't have the world title that Fedora has, and he doesn't have the buzz that a Xander Zayas has. So a guy like Keith Thurman is going to do everything he can to stay away from an animal like that. So it'll be interesting to see how he tries to play this one, what next step that he takes in his career. In a way, he's in the driver's seat in the sense that he's got the name brand appeal. He's the former champion. He's the guy who came out there and recently established himself with this dominant victory. When he wants to call guys out and he wants to make things happen, the possibility is definitely there. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's going to answer that call in the way that they would have back in the day. Keith Thurman came knocking, people were going to answer. So maybe he's not able to generate exactly what he wants, but it'll be interesting to see what's next. And he's still going to be a challenge for anybody out there. Nobody's going to be able to run through him at 154 pounds, but he's no longer going to be the favorite up against some of these top guys in the division in the way that we would have made him the favorite in the past. So let me know what you guys think. Were you excited to see Keith back in the ring? What do you think he's going to be able to do at 154 pounds? How does he stack up amongst the creme de la creme of the division? Let me know.